Welcome to the show. This is your host, David Yanis, and we're on our final couple of interviews. And, of course, why not have someone very popular in writing on your final two if we finish it up strong? You know, we always start to finish strong. And we're right here on the, for me, it'll be last Tuesday for me, then I'm heading out. Richard Blackaby, how are you doing?
Good. Good to be with you.
And Carrie?
Good.
How you doing?
Good.
And this is an interesting work, father and daughter work.
It is.
Oh, so how was that? Was it good? Did you enjoy writing it?
It's been really fun.
You haven't gotten your allowance this week, so you better save it.
Dad, no coaching here. No we don't know what you have to say. No, I'm playing. So, did y'all collaborate for the entire book, or did you?
Yeah.
How was it? And how did you write some stuff? Say, hey, Dad, check this out, and you wrote your part, or?
Well, we wrote sections of it, and she's a great storyteller, so I gave her a number of stories to tell, and then we edited each other's. Okay. But she's a better writer than I am, so she kind of cleans up, makes me sound a lot more youthful.
He's a proud dad. Tell us the title of the book.
Of course, Rethinking Best Parenting Practices.
Okay, and
so your children can thrive and get the rest of it.
All right, and what's the theme behind it?
It's basically aimed at parents. And the whole premise of it is thinking through the options instead of, there's the conventional wisdom of what everyone says, this is what you do, you send your kids to public school, you send them off to college at 18, they do this, they go to the same school that their parents did, or, just a lot of that wisdom's floating around. So what we wanted to do with this book is really take some of that and really explore it and see, is this really what's best for your kid in that situation? So
that's awesome.
We take a lot of stuff that parents do just because that's what you do, and we push back on it and say, but think about it. Is this really the best for your child? And our goal is that children will thrive in the home. And a lot of kids are simply surviving. They're just getting by. They're doing all right, but they're not thriving. And we want to push parents to say, if your child's not thriving with the way you're parenting, then consider making some adjustments.
And when you're writing together and stuff, did you actually look at her writing and say, I got to take it up a level?
Yeah. She's very concise, very humorous, and very refreshing. It's fun to write with the next generation.
Oh, wow. And of course, you've seen your dad write forever, right? And,
yeah.
And you read a lot of his books, or
a few of them.
Yeah.
A few of them.
Sorry.
Until they put her to sleep.
Like, Dad, that was a good one. I love it when I go to bed.
Nothing makes me sleep better.
But that's good. But you got the young, fresh eyes looking at it and writing it, and it gives you a different perspective.
Well, when you write about parenting, there's so many parenting books where a parent writes and says, "This is what I did." Or a child writes and says, "This is what my terrible parents did when I was growing up." But it's not as often that you have a father and daughter. So what you're talking about, you've got both perspectives throughout the book.
So any arguments between the two, don't share that right there.
No, actually, I think we're at a place where we really feel like what we did was right and good. But I know from a parent's perspective the struggles I had. When you do something that no one else is doing with your child, it's always kind of risky.
It is.
And at the same time, for a child, they're saying there's got to be more. And so it was very refreshing to get both perspectives. A parent trying to figure out, will all my friends think I'm crazy if I do, act differently or have a different way of parenting my child? And she's there. Her friends are all being parented one way, and all of a sudden, in her family, it's going to be different. And so we both had a journey to go through. But we agreed that we went on the right journey, but it's great to have both perspectives.
And how's the house? I mean, it wasn't destroyed or anything?
Not from her. From her brothers. Her brothers did a little more damage.
That's funny. Yeah. But so you actually have perspective from seeing your friends and stuff growing up as well.
Yeah, so we pull a lot from that in the book, and we explore, and it's not necessarily that we're saying everything they did that was different than us was wrong, because we understand that for a kid to thrive, every kid is something else. So one kid maybe going to public school all the way through is what one kid needs to be really successful and happy and achieve everything that he can achieve, but maybe for someone else it's homeschooling or something like that. What we really want to do is make people consider the options so they either see maybe something else that they're not doing that would be better, or be confirmed that what they're doing is what they should continue on doing. So
she's so wise.
She is.
I mean, honestly, she's you're very mature. You're very wise on that. That's good.
And sometimes for parents, our problem is there's nothing worse sometimes than initial success. So your first child seems relatively easy to raise. So child 2 comes along and you just try to raise them the same way. You treat them the same way, same rules. But in our case, our 2 sons were completely different.
Okay.
And so, you try to you say, well, this worked for my first child, now we know how to parent. And then you get a second child and you have to make all kinds of adjustments.
Wow.
And then you have a daughter, and what you did with your boys is not going to work with your daughter. But we see lots of parents who this is how I parent like this. My kids need to adjust to me.
Yeah.
And so then they have kids that are rebelling and struggling and hurt and unfulfilled. And but the parents like, I don't know what's going on. This is how I parent, and or it worked fine for this child. I don't know why this child's having so much trouble. And we realized you've got to customize your parenting to each child if each one's going to thrive.
And what advice would you give parents right now?
Well, one thing was listen to your kids.
Okay.
Oftentimes we think we're the parent, we're the adult, we understand how to pay bills and logistics, and so when our kid tells us something crazy like they want to quit ballet, they want to homeschool instead of public school, whatever else, my initial thoughts always were, well, but they don't understand how complicated that is, or how much we paid for this, or what it would require, and so I'd kind of tend to dismiss what my kids were saying, and I came to realize they may not know all the logistics.
Yeah.
We may have to work out details, but a lot of times God speaks to you through your kids, and if you'll listen, God can guide you to know how to parent each child. But a lot of parents, they wait till their kid is in rebellion and into drugs and trouble and all kinds of things, and then the parents will look back and say, I don't know what happened. We took these kids to church growing up, and I don't know why they suddenly rejected everything. And if you look back, you could see there were all kinds of signs where God was, I think, trying to get the parents' attention to make some adjustments.
Yes.
But they didn't make the adjustments when they could have, and now they get to rebellion and serious problems. And so advice to parents that we would give would be to say, the Spirit of God will guide you to know how to parent, but listen when He speaks through your children. And don't dismiss it. They may be younger and inexperienced, but they're also pretty good experts on their life and what
Yes,
they need.
they are. Now, a quick question for you, Richard, as well, is what gave you the idea? Whose idea was it to write the book together?
Whose idea was that? Was that yours?
I think it was kind of a collaborative idea. It started out, I think originally we were starting out with, it started with my journey as I was in public school, then Christian school, and then we decided to homeschool.
Okay.
And that was one of the kind of big things that we did that was different, and we got a lot of criticism for it, and people kind of asking us, do you know what you're doing? Are you sure it's going to be okay? Are you going to be able to go to college one day? And so that was one thing, and then we just noticed a lot of other areas where it was kind of similar to that, and so...
Yeah, we began to realize it's not just a homeschooling issue. We looked and saw in a number of areas we had parented differently than most people had.
Okay.
And people looked at us and said, well, how did you get all 3 of your kids to turn out so well? All 3 of my kids are studying in seminary and serving God. And for years I wouldn't write on parenting because I thought, I don't know that all my kids are going to make it to adulthood without going to jail for a while or something else. But at a certain point, people kept saying, well, but your kids have all turned out well, your parents' kids all turned out well. So why is it that generation after generation, these kids are all turning out to love God and serve Him? And so when we began to write that, and what was surprising was, instead of just saying, well, okay, here's the things you do to have good kids, we realized that in so many areas we actually broke the rules and the norms, and that kind of surprised us. Because we started, when we started telling people what we did, we had all these shocked looks like, well, why did you do that, or didn't you do like everybody else does with this? And we'd say, I realize it dawns on us, no, I guess where most parents parent this way, we just somehow felt that we should go the other way. And that takes a lot of courage to do that, when parents know in their heart what their kid needs, but it means that your parents may not understand what you're doing, or the grandparents may question what you're doing, but in your heart that's what you ought to do. And so so that's kind of our journey, was and that's what we would encourage others to do, is to say, trust the voice of the Spirit of God. When the Spirit of God begins to alert you that your child is struggling in school or being tempted by friends and peers, don't assume that you only can do things one way.
Amen.
The Spirit of God can give you lots of different ways to adjust your parenting so that each of your children thrives. And it may be something you've never done before, never thought of doing before, but your parents maybe never did it with you, but now God says, but I'm going to do a new thing in your life, in your home, so that that child can thrive and grow up to love me.
Amen. That is an awesome way to end the show as well. But I want to ask you one question. Were you scared writing your book with your pops?
I was, but I think less scared than if I was writing it all by myself.
That's a good one. She's so wise.
Yeah.
Carrie, thank you for being on the show. Richard, thank you for being on the show as well. And is the book released already? Or
No, this fall.
This fall? Okay. Well, give me that date whenever y'all can, and I'll make sure this airs around that time, so we can promote you pretty good. We'll be back with another great guest.